The morning sun rose slowly over the green fields of New Busan. Golden light touched the tall crops that stretched for kilometers in every direction. Farmers were already walking between the rows, checking their plants and talking quietly to each other. Children ran toward the school building near the center of town. It was a peaceful day, like every other day on this small colony world. Governor Yoon Dae-ho stood at his office window and watched his people begin their work. He was 58 years old, with gray hair and tired eyes that had seen too much war in his younger days. He had been a military engineer once, building bases and defense systems on distant worlds. But those days were behind him now. He had come to HFY 7 to find peace, to help build something instead of destroying things. New Busan was his greatest achievement. 12,000 people called this place home. They had come from Earth and other human colonies, looking for a fresh start. The planet HFY 7 was perfect for them. The air was clean, the soil was rich, and the weather was gentle. In just 15 years, they had built a thriving community. The governor smiled as he watched a group of farmers loading vegetables onto a transport vehicle. New Busan produced food for 3 other colony worlds. They were not rich, but they were happy. They were free. Captain Park Yoonbai walked into the governor's office without knocking. She was a tall woman in her early 40s, with short black hair and sharp eyes that missed nothing. She had been a Marine for 20 years before taking command of New Busan's small defense force. 200 soldiers and 3 old patrol ships were all she had to protect the colony. It was enough for pirates and small threats. It would have to be enough. "Good morning, Captain," Dae-ho said, turning from the window. "You look worried." "I am worried," Yoonbai replied. She placed a data tablet on his desk. Lieutenant Beak picked up strange readings at the edge of our system. Ships coming out of hyperspace. Many ships. The governor's smile disappeared. He picked up the tablet and studied the numbers. His military training had never truly left him, and what he saw made his blood turn cold. 37 contacts. That is not a trading convoy. No, sir. That is a war fleet. That is a war fleet? Dae-ho sat down heavily in his chair. Have you tried to communicate with them? Lieutenant Beak has been hailing them for 2 hours. No response. In the communications center, Lieutenant Beak Ji-woo sat at her console and tried again. She was young, only 26, with bright eyes and an optimistic heart. She had joined the colony defense force because she believed in protecting people, not because she wanted to fight. She had never seen real combat. She hoped she never would. Unknown vessels, this is New Busan Colony. Please identify yourselves and state your intentions. We welcome peaceful contact. Static answered her. Then, slowly, an image appeared on her screen. Ji-woo gasped and nearly fell from her chair. The creature on the screen was not human. It stood over 2 meters tall, with dark blue skin covered in hard plates like armor. Its eyes were completely black, showing no emotion. Sharp teeth filled its mouth when it spoke. "I am Supreme Warlord Thurin of the Vectari Dominion," the creature said. Its voice was deep and cold. "Your colony now belongs to us. You will surrender all weapons, all ships, and all authority to my forces within 6 hours. If you refuse, every living thing on your world will be destroyed." The transmission ended. Ji-woo's hands were shaking as she contacted the governor's office. "Sir, you need to hear this." Within an hour, every leader in New Busan had gathered in the colony's main hall. The recording played on a large screen, and the room fell silent. Farmers, teachers, doctors, and engineers stared at the alien warlord's face. Fear filled the air like a cold fog. Dr. Kim Tae-young stood near the back of the room. He was the colony's chief medical officer and also their only xenobiologist. He had spent his life studying alien life forms, but he had never encountered the Vectari before. He quickly searched through his database on his personal tablet. "The Vectari Dominion," he said quietly to the governor. "I found records. They are a conquering empire. They have enslaved at least 40 different species in the past 300 years. They do not negotiate. They do not show mercy. What happens to people who surrender?" Daeho asked. Tae-young's face was pale. "Slavery. The strong become workers. The weak become food." Governor Yoon closed his eyes for a long moment. When he opened them, there was steel in his gaze. He walked to the front of the room and raised his hand for silence. "My friends," he began, "we have been given a choice. We can surrender and hope for mercy from creatures who have never shown mercy to anyone. Or we can fight." A farmer named Shin Haijin stood up. She was in her 30s, strong from years of working the land, with dirt still under her fingernails. "What chance do we have against 37 warships? We have 200 soldiers and 3 old patrol boats." "Very little chance," Daeho admitted. "Perhaps no chance at all. But I have studied history. I know what happens to people who surrender to empires. I would rather die on my feet than live on my knees." Captain Park stepped forward. Her voice was steady and calm. "I spent 20 years as a Marine. I fought in the border wars. I have seen what happens when people give up without a fight. The enemy learns that they can take whatever they want. But when people resist, even if they lose, the enemy learns that victory has a price. A heavy price." She looked around the room, the frightened faces of farmers and shopkeepers and teachers. "We may not win this battle, but we can make them bleed. We can make them remember New Bizen forever. And maybe, just maybe, our message will reach Earth. Help might come. But it will not come if we surrender in the first hour." The room was quiet. Then, slowly, hands began to rise. One by one, the colonists voted. Farmers who had never held a weapon voted to fight. Teachers who had only known peace voted to resist. Parents who wanted their children to live free voted to stand against the darkness. The vote was unanimous. Governor Yoon nodded slowly. Pride filled his heart, mixed with terrible sadness for what was to come. He walked to the communications console and opened a channel to the Vectari fleet. "Supreme Warlord Thurin," he said, his voice calm and clear. "I am Governor Yoon Daeho of New Bizen Colony. We have received your generous offer of surrender. We decline. If you want our world, you will have to come down here and take it from us. But I promise you this, you will pay for every centimeter of ground with blood. Our blood, yes, but also yours. So much of yours." He ended the transmission and turned to face his people. "We have 6 hours. Let us use them well." The colony of New Bizen began to prepare for war. 6 hours was not much time. But the people of New Bizen worked as if their lives depended on it. Because their lives did depend on it, Captain Park Yoonbai stood in the center of town, giving orders with calm precision. She had transformed from a quiet defender of a peaceful colony into a warrior preparing for the fight of her life. Her soldiers ran in every direction, carrying weapons, setting up positions, and digging trenches wherever they could. "The agricultural sector in the east," she told her lieutenants. "That is where they will land first. It is flat, open ground, perfect for their troop carriers. We will let them think it is an easy landing zone. Then we will show them how wrong they are." Governor Yoon Dae-ho worked alongside his people. He had put aside his civilian clothes and now wore his old military uniform, dusty and faded, but still intact. It still fit, though it was tighter than he remembered. He helped the engineers rig explosives in the grain silos and storage buildings. "If we cannot keep these supplies," he told the farmers sadly, "then neither will they." Dr. Kim Tae-young had locked himself in his medical laboratory. His hands moved quickly over chemical compounds and biological samples. He was not a soldier, but he was a scientist. And science could be a weapon. The Vectari have exoskeletons, he muttered to himself, reading the data on his screens. Calcium-based, like insect shells? If I can create a compound that causes rapid calcification. He worked faster, mixing chemicals that should never be mixed, creating something terrible and wonderful at the same time. Lieutenant Beek Ji-woo sat at her communications console, fingers flying across the controls. She had 2 jobs now. First, she had to monitor all Vectari communications, trying to learn their plans. Second, she had to send a message to Earth. The problem was distance. Earth was 17 days away by hyperspace. Even a message traveling at light speed would take weeks to reach the nearest relay station. Help would not come in time for the initial battle. But maybe, if they could hold out long enough, reinforcements would arrive. This is New Bizen Colony calling Earth Command. She broadcast on every frequency she could reach. We are under attack by alien forces. 37 warships, species designation Vectari Dominion. We have 12,000 civilians and 200 defenders. We are choosing to fight. Please send assistance immediately. Repeat, we need help. She sent the message again and again, praying that someone would hear it. In the eastern fields, farmers became soldiers. They had never trained for combat, but they knew how to work together. They knew how to dig in hard soil, how to carry heavy loads, and how to follow instructions without complaint. These skills served them well now. Shin Haijin organized the civilian evacuation. The children, the elderly, and those unable to fight were moved to the underground bunker systems beneath the colony. These tunnels had been built for storm protection, designed to shelter the population from the planet's occasional hurricanes. Now they would shelter people from something far worse. Keep moving, Haijin called out, guiding families through the tunnel entrances. Take only what you can carry: food, water, medicine. Leave everything else. A little girl was crying, clutching a stuffed animal. Her mother tried to pull her forward, but the child would not move. Haijin knelt down beside her. What is your name? She asked gently. Sumin, the girl whispered. That is a beautiful name. And who is this? Haijin pointed to the stuffed animal. Bomb. He is scared. Haijin smiled despite the fear in her own heart. Wow, Bomb is very lucky to have a brave girl like you to protect him. Can you take him down into the tunnels? It is safe down there. I promise. The girl nodded and let her mother guide her underground. Haijin watched them go, then returned to her work. There were hundreds more to evacuate. Above the planet, Supreme Warlord Thurin watched the humans scurry about their tiny colony. His black eyes showed no emotion, but inside, he felt contempt. These soft creatures thought they could resist the Vectari Dominion? They would learn their mistakes soon enough. Report, he commanded. His second officer stepped forward. The humans have rejected our ultimatum, Supreme One. They appear to be preparing defensive positions. Preparing to die, Thurin corrected. How many warriors should we send? 5,000 should be more than sufficient, Supreme One. Our intelligence suggests the humans have fewer than 300 combat-capable personnel. Send 5,000 then. I want this colony secured within one rotation. We have schedules to keep. The Vectari Empire had conquered 40 species. Not once had they faced serious resistance from a colony this small. Thurin expected New Bizen to fall within hours. He was already planning the next phase of his campaign, the conquest of Earth itself. Back on the surface, the 6 hours were almost gone. Captain Park gathered her soldiers for a final briefing. Listen carefully, she said. We are outnumbered and outgunned. The enemy has better ships, better armor, and more soldiers than we will ever have. By all logic, we should lose this battle. She paused, looking at the faces of her troops. Some were professional soldiers like herself. Others were farmers and engineers who had picked up weapons for the first time today. All of them were scared. All of them were determined. But the Vectari have never fought humans before. They do not know what we are capable of. They think we are soft because we prefer peace. They think we are weak because we are small. They are wrong. She held up her rifle. It was a standard projectile weapon, firing metal bullets at high velocity. The Vectari used plasma weapons, which were impressive, but had limitations that energy shields were designed to counter. Their shields are calibrated for plasma fire, Park explained. Our bullets will punch right through. They will not expect this. We will use every advantage we have, no matter how small. We will fight dirty if we have to. We will make them pay for every step they take on our world. Governor Yoon addressed the colonists one final time over the public broadcast system. His voice was calm, but filled with emotion. My friends, in a few minutes, the enemy will come. Some of us will not survive this day. But I want you to know that I am proud to stand with you. We did not choose this fight, but we choose how we will face it. We choose to stand together. We choose to protect our homes and our families. We choose to show the universe what humans are made of. He paused, and when he spoke again, his voice was stronger. Hundreds of years ago, our ancestors faced impossible odds many times. They fought against empires and invaders and tyrants. They did not always win, but they never stopped fighting. That spirit lives in all of us. Today, we will show the Vectari what it means to attack humanity. The sky began to darken as Vectari troop carriers descended through the clouds. They were massive ships, each carrying hundreds of warriors. They fell toward the eastern agricultural sector, exactly as Captain Park had predicted. The colonists watched from their hidden positions. Fingers tightened on triggers. Hearts pounded in chests. Fear was everywhere, but so was determination. In her communications center, Lieutenant Beak continued to broadcast. This is New Busan. The enemy is landing. We are engaging. If anyone can hear this, please remember us. Remember what we stood for. Remember that we did not surrender. The first Vectari transport touched down in the grain fields. Its doors opened, and alien warriors poured out in perfect formation. Their armor gleamed in the fading sunlight. Their weapons hummed with deadly energy. They marched forward confidently, expecting frightened farmers to throw down their weapons and beg for mercy. Instead, the ground beneath their feet exploded. The battle for New Busan had begun. Fire and thunder tore through the eastern fields. The explosives that the colonists had buried during their 6 hours of preparation now ripped through the Vectari formation with terrible efficiency. Hundreds of alien warriors fell in the first seconds, their bodies thrown into the air by the blasts. Supreme Warlord Thurin watched from his flagship in orbit. For the first time in his long career of conquest, his black eyes showed something other than contempt. They showed surprise. What is happening? He demanded. The humans... They set traps, Supreme One, his officer reported, voice shaking. Our first wave has taken heavy casualties. Impossible. They are farmers. But the evidence was undeniable. The neat formation of 5,000 elite Vectari warriors had become a scene of chaos and death. And then the shooting started. Captain Park Yunbai had positioned her best marksmen in the tree lines and behind the low hills surrounding the fields. They opened fire with their projectile rifles, and something remarkable happened. The Vectari energy shields, designed to stop plasma bolts, flickered uselessly as metal bullets passed right through them. The aliens fell by the dozens, then by the hundreds. They had never encountered this type of weapon before. Their shields were worthless. Their armor, designed to disperse energy, was punched through by high-velocity metal. They died without understanding how. "Hold your positions," Park shouted into her communicator. "Controlled fire! Make every shot count." A young soldier next to her was shaking with fear and excitement. His name was Sho Minho, a farmer's son who had never held a weapon before yesterday. His first 3 shots missed completely. His fourth hit a Vectari warrior in the neck, and the alien collapsed. Minho stared at what he had done. He had killed something. The reality of war crashed over him like a wave. But then he saw more Vectari charging toward his position, and survival instinct took over. He kept shooting. In the tunnels beneath the colony, Shin Haijin worked tirelessly. The sounds of battle above were muffled, but still terrifying. Children cried. Parents tried to comfort them while fear ate at their own hearts. The elderly sat in silence, remembering other wars, other desperate times. "We need more supplies at Section 7, Haijin called out. "Medical kits and water. Move quickly." A volunteer ran to help. Everyone who could not fight was doing something to support those who could. They carried supplies, treated minor injuries, and kept the bunker systems organized. They were not soldiers, but they were part of the defense. Above ground, the battle continued. The Vectari regrouped and pushed forward despite their losses. They were elite warriors, trained from birth for combat. They would not retreat from mere humans. A Vectari commander named Raktar rallied his troops. "Advance! Their weapons are primitive. We will overwhelm them with numbers." They charged through the burning fields, stepping over the bodies of their fallen comrades. The human defensive line began to buckle. There were simply too many aliens pushing forward. Governor Yoon Dae-ho saw the eastern flank starting to collapse. Without thinking, he grabbed a rifle and ran toward the fighting. He was 58 years old and had not been in combat for 2 decades, but his body remembered what to do. "Fall back to the secondary position," he shouted to the retreating defenders. "Covering fire! Move in pairs!" The colonists obeyed, grateful for the calm voice giving them orders. Yoon fired his rifle while walking backward, keeping the enemy at bay while his people retreated. A plasma bolt sizzled past his head, close enough to singe his hair. He did not flinch. By sunset, the first day of battle was ending. The Vectari had pushed the colonists back from the eastern fields, but the cost had been enormous. Of the 5,000 warriors in the first wave, over 3,000 were dead or wounded. The humans had lost 400 defenders and civilians caught in the crossfire. On the Vectari flagship, Supreme Warlord Thurin was furious. 3,000 casualties? Against farmers? This is unacceptable. Supreme One, their weapons are unexpected, his officer said carefully. Our shields cannot stop them. We need to adapt our tactics. Then adapt. I want that colony destroyed by dawn. Thurin ordered orbital bombardment of the outer settlements. Beams of energy fell from the sky, turning farmhouses and storage buildings into craters. The colonists had evacuated these areas, so few lives were lost, but watching their homes burn was devastating. "They are destroying everything," Lieutenant Beak reported from her communications center. She had been broadcasting continuously for hours, sending updates to anyone who might be listening. "But we hurt them. We really hurt them." Captain Park assessed their situation. It was not good. They had inflicted massive casualties on the enemy, but they had also spent nearly half of their ammunition. Their defensive positions in the east were lost. They would have to fall back to the bunker networks, closer to the colony center. "We cannot win a war of attrition," she told Governor Yoon. "We need to change our approach. What do you suggest?" "Guerrilla tactics. We stop trying to hold lines. We hit them and disappear. We make them afraid to sleep. We make every building, every tunnel, every shadow into a potential death trap. Yu nodded slowly. It was not the kind of warfare he preferred, but they had no choice. Do it. That night, the colonists melted into the bunker systems. They carried their weapons and what supplies they could save. The tunnels were cramped and dark, but they were safe from orbital bombardment. The Vectari would have to dig them out by hand. Dr. Kim Tae-young finally emerged from his laboratory. He looked exhausted but triumphant. He carried several sealed containers filled with a pale liquid. "I finished it," he told Captain Park. "A calcification agent. If this touches Vectari skin, their exoskeleton will harden uncontrollably. They will be paralyzed, unable to move or even breathe." Park took one of the containers carefully. "How do we deliver it?" "Gas grenades would work best. Or we could contaminate their water supply if we can reach their camps." "You are a terrifying man, Doctor." Tae-young shrugged. "I am a scientist. I solve problems." As darkness fell completely, the Vectari began their second assault. 20,000 warriors landed across the colony, surrounding it from all sides. They expected to find the humans cowering in their ruined buildings. Instead, they found empty streets and silence. Then the attacks began. Human fighters emerged from tunnels, fired their weapons, and disappeared before the Vectari could respond. Explosions ripped through supply depots. Snipers picked off officers and communication specialists. Every time the aliens gathered in groups, something terrible happened to them. A Vectari patrol walked through what had once been the colony's marketplace. The buildings were dark and silent. Suddenly, a figure appeared in a window, fired 3 shots that killed 3 aliens, and vanished. "Where did he go?" the patrol leader demanded. His answer came in the form of a grenade rolling out of a doorway. It exploded with a cloud of pale gas. The patrol leader felt his skin tightening, hardening. He tried to scream but could not open his mouth. His entire body was becoming like stone. Within seconds, he was a statue, a frozen monument to human ingenuity and desperation. Lieutenant Beak continued her broadcasts from a mobile unit she had set up in the tunnels. Day 2 of the siege of New Bizen. The Vectari have committed 20,000 troops. They control the surface, but we control the underground. We are still fighting. We will not stop fighting. Somewhere, light years away, her message was received. A relay station picked up the transmission and forwarded it to Earth. Military commanders gathered around screens, watching footage of a tiny colony standing against an alien empire. They began mobilizing the 3rd Fleet, but the 3rd Fleet was far away. And in New Bizen, the colonists were running out of time, ammunition, and hope. Yet they kept fighting, because that was what humans did. The 3rd day of the siege dawned gray and smoky. Fires still burned across New Bizen. The beautiful green fields that Governor Yoon had watched from his window were now blackened wastelands. The colony was dying, but it was not yet dead. Captain Park Yoonbai had not slept in 40 hours. Her eyes were red, her uniform torn and stained with blood that was not entirely her own. She crouched in a tunnel junction, planning their next attack with a handful of exhausted soldiers. "Their main supply depot is here," she said, pointing at a rough map scratched into the dirt floor. They landed 2 transport ships to keep their troops fed and supplied. "If we destroy those ships, 3 battalions will be cut off without reinforcement. How do we get close enough?" asked Sergeant Lee Young-sik, a grizzled veteran who had fought beside Park for 15 years. "They have guards everywhere. We go through the maintenance tunnels. They do not know these passages exist. We come up inside their perimeter, plan our charges, and disappear before they know what happened." It was a suicide mission, and everyone knew it. But volunteers stepped forward anyway. 12 colonists, 8 soldiers, and 4 farmers followed Captain Park into the darkness beneath the Vectari lines. They moved in complete silence, navigating by memory and touch. The tunnels were narrow, built for maintenance robots, not humans. They crawled on their bellies through spaces barely wide enough to squeeze through. Dust filled their lungs. Rocks scraped their skin. After 2 hours, they emerged in a drainage ditch 20 meters from the first transport ship. Vektari guards patrolled nearby, but they were looking outward, watching for attacks from the colony. They never expected the enemy to come from underground. Park divided her team. 6 went for the first ship, 6 for the second. They planted their explosive charges in silence, working quickly but carefully. One mistake would alert the entire enemy camp. Young farmer Cho Min-ho was part of the second team. His hands trembled as he attached his charges to the ship's fuel line. He was so scared that he could barely breathe. But he thought of his family hiding in the bunkers, of little Su-min clutching her stuffed animal bomb, and his hand steadied. The teams retreated the way they had come. When they were safely back in the tunnels, Captain Park pressed the detonator. The explosion lit up the night sky. Both transport ships disappeared in balls of fire that could be seen for kilometers. Secondary explosions followed as ammunition and fuel cooked off. 3,000 Vektari warriors suddenly found themselves stranded without supplies or reinforcement. "Move!" Park shouted. "They will be coming." The tunnels shook as the Vektari poured fire into the ground, trying to collapse the passages. The colonists ran blindly through the darkness, stone falling around them. 2 of their number did not make it, buried under tons of rubble. The rest escaped by seconds. In his flagship, Supreme Warlord Thurin received the news of the supply ship destruction. His rage was terrible to behold. He had lost nearly 14,000 warriors in 3 days. Against farmers. His reputation, built over centuries of conquest, was being destroyed by creatures who should have surrendered in the first hour. "Destroy the tunnels," he ordered. "All of them. Use seismic charges. Bury them alive. Supreme One, that will kill any prisoners we might take. The slaves, I do not want slaves from this world. I want them dead. Every single one." The Vektari began systematic bombardment of the tunnel networks. The ground shook constantly as charges detonated deep underground. Sections of the bunker system collapsed, killing dozens of civilians who had no time to escape. Shin Haijin led evacuation efforts through the chaos. She had become the heart of the civilian resistance, the calm voice that guided people through the darkness when everything was falling apart. "This way. Keep moving. Do not stop." A section of tunnel ahead of her collapsed. She quickly found another route, leading her group of frightened families through passages barely wide enough to walk single file. Behind them, the ceiling continued to fall. An elderly man stumbled and could not get up. His leg was broken. His wife knelt beside him, crying, refusing to leave. "Oh," the old man told Haijin. "Save the others. We will be fine." Haijin looked at him, at his wife, at the 40 people waiting behind her. There was no time for everyone, but she could not leave them. "Help me," she said to the nearest man. Together, they lifted the injured elder and carried him forward. The tunnel collapsed behind them seconds after they cleared it. Governor Yoon Dae-ho was defending a critical junction when the eastern bunker was finally breached. Vektari warriors poured through a hole they had blasted in the ceiling, dropping down into the tunnel system itself. There were only a handful of defenders at the junction. Most were civilians with hunting rifles. Against 50 Vektari elites, they stood no chance. "Fall back," Yoon ordered. "I will hold them." "Sir, you will die." "Fall back." "That is an order." The governor raised his rifle. He was old and tired and terrified, but he was also calm. He had lived a good life. He had built something beautiful. If this was his end, he would face it standing. The first Vektari came through the breach. Yoon shot him in the face. The second followed, and Yoon shot him too. He moved through the corridor like a ghost from his warrior past, firing, reloading, firing again. Bodies piled up in front of him. Behind him, 340 civilians fled deeper into the tunnel system. Children were crying. Parents were praying. They did not stop running. Yoon killed 11 Vectari before his rifle jammed. He drew his sidearm and killed 4 more. When that was empty, he grabbed a fallen Vectari's weapon and kept fighting. For 11 minutes, one old man held back an army. When they finally brought him down, surrounded by the bodies of his enemies, he was still trying to reload. Captain Park received the news of the governor's death over her communicator. She closed her eyes for a long moment. Then she opened them and kept fighting. Lieutenant Baek Ji-woo had moved her communications equipment 3 times as the Vectari collapsed tunnel after tunnel. She was running out of safe places to broadcast from. But she refused to stop. Day 4 of the siege, she reported. Governor Yoon Dae-ho is dead. He died defending the eastern bunker, holding off enemy forces while civilians evacuated. We have lost over 6,000 people. But the Vectari have lost 14,000. We are still fighting. The Vectari found her position on the 4th day. They did not approach quietly this time. They blasted through the tunnel walls with overwhelming force, determined to silence the voice that had been broadcasting human defiance across the stars. Ji-woo saw them coming on her sensors. She had maybe 2 minutes. Instead of running, she stayed at her console and kept broadcasting. If anyone can hear this, remember what happened here. Remember New Bizen. Remember that we did not kneel. Remember that we made them bleed for every centimeter. Remember, the ceiling collapsed. Ji-woo kept transmitting even as rock fell around her. Her last words, transmitted across 17 light years to the relay station that would carry them to Earth, were these: "They are still coming. Give them hell for us." Then silence, but her messages had been heard. Deep in space, the Third Fleet was burning toward Hana 7 at maximum speed. Admiral Choi Sang-hee stood on the bridge of the dreadnought Indomitable, reading Lieutenant Baek's final transmission. "How long until we reach them?" she asked. 26 hours, Admiral. Push the engines harder. I do not care if they melt. We are not arriving too late." On New Bizen, the survivors did not know help was coming. They only knew that they had to survive one more day. And then another. And then another. They were running out of food. Running out of ammunition. Running out of people. But they were not running out of will. The 5th day dawned over a colony in ruins. New Bizen, once green and beautiful, was now a wasteland of craters and collapsed buildings. Smoke rose from 100 fires. The air smelled of death and burning metal. In the deepest bunkers, the survivors huddled together. Of the original 12,000 colonists, fewer than 5,000 remained alive. Of the 200 defenders, only 60 could still fight. They were out of medical supplies, nearly out of ammunition, and completely out of hope. Captain Park Eun-bai gathered her remaining soldiers for what she believed would be their final stand. She was wounded, a plasma burn scarring her left arm, but she stood straight and spoke clearly. "They are coming," she said simply. 30,000 troops. Everything they have left. They want to end this today. A young soldier, barely 18 years old, raised his hand. "What do we do, Captain?" "We fight. We fight until we cannot fight anymore. We make them remember this day for the rest of their miserable lives." In the command bunker, Dr. Kim Tae-young handed out the last of his calcification grenades. "Use them wisely," he said. "There will be no more." Shin Hae-jin organized the civilians one last time. Those who could hold a weapon were given one. Those who could not were placed in the deepest chambers with the children. If the defenders fell, the civilians would be the last line. "Stay quiet. Haijin told the children gathered around her. No matter what you hear, stay quiet and stay hidden. Little Sumin clutched her stuffed animal bomb and nodded solemnly. She did not understand everything that was happening, but she understood that the adults were scared. She decided to be brave for them. Above ground, Supreme Warlord Thurin watched his final assault begin. 30,000 Victari warriors advanced on the remaining bunker entrances from all directions. There would be no escape this time. No clever tactics. Just overwhelming force crushing the last resistance. This ends now, Thurin growled. Kill them all. Captain Park positioned her defenders at the 3 remaining bunker entrances. 20 soldiers at each position. 60 people against 30,000. The mathematics were impossible. But mathematics did not account for human determination. The first wave of Victari reached the northern entrance. They expected easy victory. Instead, they found Captain Park herself, standing in the open with a rifle in her hands. "Come and get us," she said quietly. The battle that followed was brutal beyond description. The colonists fought like demons, selling their lives for as many enemy dead as possible. For every human that fell, 5 Victari died. Then 10. Then 20. Dr. Kim's calcification grenades turned entire squads of aliens into statues. Improvised explosives collapsed tunnel entrances on advancing warriors. Sharpshooters picked off officers and communication specialists. The defenders gave ground slowly, step by bloody step, making the enemy pay an impossible price. But it was not enough. There were simply too many Victari. One by one, the defensive positions fell. The survivors retreated deeper into the bunkers, preparing for the end. Then the sky changed. It began with a strange light, like a second sun appearing above the clouds. Then another. Then another. The colonists looked up in confusion. The Victari looked up in terror. The United Earth Navy's 3rd Fleet had arrived. 42 warships emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation. At their center was the dreadnought Indomitable, the largest and most powerful vessel in the human fleet. Admiral Choi Sang-hee stood on its bridge, looking down at the planet below. "All ships," she commanded, "weapons free. Send them to hell." The Victari fleet in orbit had been expecting an easy occupation. They were not prepared for a full-scale naval engagement. Human warships, designed through centuries of internal conflict and perfected against enemies far more dangerous than the Victari, tore into them with merciless efficiency. The Victari had 37 ships. Within 30 minutes, they had 15. Within 60 minutes, they had 3. Within 90 minutes, they had none. Admiral Choi watched the last Victari cruiser explode. Then she turned her attention to the surface. Marine landing parties, deploy, secure the colony, and capture Thurin alive. I want to have a conversation with him. Supreme Warlord Thurin tried to flee. He ran through the ruins of New Bizan, surrounded by his personal guard, heading for an emergency shuttle. But human marines dropped from the sky all around him, cutting off every escape route. The final battle lasted only minutes. The Victari personal guard, elite warriors who had conquered dozens of worlds, fell before the human marines like wheat before a scythe. When it was over, Thurin stood alone, surrounded by enemies. A marine sergeant approached him, weapon raised. "Supreme Warlord Thurin, you are now a prisoner of the United Earth Navy. If you resist, you will be killed. If you cooperate, you will live long enough to face justice for what you have done here." Thurin looked at the humans surrounding him. In their eyes, he saw something he had never seen in any species he had conquered. He saw rage. Cold, controlled, patient rage. These creatures would not forget what had happened. They would never forgive. For the first time in his life, the great conqueror felt fear. The bunker doors opened. Sunlight poured into the darkness for the first time in days. The survivors emerged slowly, blinking, unable to believe that the nightmare was over. Captain Park, Yumbai, walked out first. She was covered in blood and dirt, her uniform in tatters, her body broken in a dozen places. But she carried the colony's flag in her hands. With the last of her strength, she raised it over the ruins. Behind her came the survivors, farmers and teachers, doctors and engineers, children who had hidden in the darkness, clutching stuffed animals and praying for safety. They walked through the devastation of their home and wept. Shin Haijin emerged carrying little Sumin in her arms. The girl still held her stuffed animal bomb. She looked around at the destroyed colony with wide eyes. "Is it over?" she asked. "Yes, little one," Haijin whispered. "It is over." Admiral Choi came down to the surface personally. She walked through the ruins, past the bodies of defenders and invaders alike, until she reached Captain Park. "You held," the Admiral said simply. "We held," Park agreed. "We lost almost everything. But we held. You did more than hold. You showed the entire galaxy what happens when you attack humanity." Choi looked around at the survivors, at the children emerging from the bunkers, at the flag flying over the ruins. "This will be remembered forever." 1 year later, a memorial was built in the center of New Bizen. It was a simple wall of black stone, bearing 7,700 names. Governor Yoon Dae-ho, Lieutenant Baek Ji-woo, Sergeant Lee Young-sik, thousands of others who had given their lives defending their home. The colony was rebuilt around the memorial. New buildings rose from the ashes. New fields were planted. Children played in the streets again, their laughter echoing through the recovering town. The Victari Dominion sent a diplomatic envoy to negotiate peace. They were made to walk past the memorial before the talks began. They were made to see the names of those who had died. They were made to understand what humanity was capable of. Admiral Choi delivered the terms personally. You came to New Bizen expecting an easy conquest. You expected to make it your first human settlement, a stepping stone to Earth itself. Instead, you found something you had never encountered before. You found people who would rather die than surrender. She leaned forward, and her voice became cold as ice. New Bizen was to be your first human settlement. It will be your last. If you ever threaten humanity again, if you ever attack another human world, we will find your homeworld. And we will show you what human vengeance truly means. The Victari envoy signed the peace treaty without negotiation. Years passed. The memorial remained. Every year, on the anniversary of the siege, survivors and their descendants gathered to remember. They read the names aloud. They told stories of courage and sacrifice. They taught their children what had happened and why it mattered. Captain Park Eun-bai, now retired and gray-haired, always gave the final speech. Her words were always the same. They thought we were farmers, she would say, looking out at the crowd. They thought we were soft because we chose peace. They thought we were weak because we were few. They learned the truth the hard way. She would pause, letting the silence stretch. Then she would smile. We are human. We do not conquer easily. We do not surrender quietly. And we never, ever forget. The crowd would cheer. The flag would wave. And somewhere in the stars, other species would hear the story of New Bizen and learn a simple lesson. Do not attack humanity, because humanity fights back.